The wolves rose out of the snow and closed the circle. Nora Hale was cutting willow when Ben made the small sound a child makes at the edge of understanding. His mittens found her skirt. Rose stood with breath pluming. The sky lay iron white. Between the pines and that hard lid, gray bodies slid and watched. "Back of me," Nora said, "like we practiced." She set herself where the ridge narrowed, one boot in an elk track. The basket bit her arm. The hatchet hung bright. The children touched the hem of her coat the way people touch a church rail. Hunger is winter's oldest law, and someone must stand between hunger and the small. The thought came as steadiness, like heat rising off a stove. The wolves moved silently, feet fitted to the crust. One low whine curled the air. The nearest wolf held its head level. Another flowed sideways to test the wind. Nora marked their spacing as she marked fence posts and furrows. She did not wish them dead. She wished them back in timber with meat enough to forget fear. A man detached from the trees, long, spare, moving with the care of one who has lived where mistakes are paid in blood. He lifted an arm. A rifle answered the sky. The crack rolled the gully and took the edge off courage. Another shot marked the far side of the circle. The gray bodies float away as water withdraws from a bowl. Nora counted to 20 before breathing fully. The man came on like a fur shadow and stood where the wolf had stood, hat brim low, rifle low too, as if neither meant harm. "Ma'am," he said, dry and careful. "Silas Quinn." "Thank you," Nora said. "My children." Ben, Rose, mind your feet. "We're moving." Silas scanned the slope. "We'll take the ridge back. Crust will hold. They're hungry, not that hungry. Not today." He said it like the weather, a fact to plan by. They started single file, Nora between the children and the man. Ben walked with his jaw clamped. Rose kept looking back until Nora set 2 fingers on her neck to remind her to move forward. The ridge ran them along a broken fence where snow had come through like a slow river. The house lay in the bottom, a block of weathered boards with a stovepipe like a promise. Smoke meant home, and there was none. Nora had banked the fire too tightly. "You from across White Gulch?" Silas asked. "The Hale place. I trapped the North Forks." A wind pulled at Nora's coat. The path fell away for 20 steps. Silas went first, cutting tracks with the balance of a man who knows his feet. "Set yours where mine is set," he said. Save's breath, Ben slipped. Nora caught him hard and sure. "Up," she said. He rose like a colt, ashamed, and she smoothed his sleeve as if it had been planned. By the time they crossed the last willow, the light had gone to pewter. The yard wore a crust of ice broken by the memory of boots. The door hung crooked on a hinge that had split the jamb. Boards by the latch showed the marks of last week's wind that had shouldered in, and of Nora's knee that had shouldered it out. Silas took it in with one slow glance. "I can set that straight," he said. "If you'd have it." Nora stiffened. Pride is a small fire that keeps a woman upright when the big ones go out. "We're able." "Of course." His voice stayed mild. "A straight door makes wolves think twice. Men, too." He looked at the children. "Let me earn my powder." Rose, already on the step, turned for permission, mitten on the latch. Help is easier to carry when it is shaped like an object that a person can hold without breaking. "Ben," Nora said, "the tin of nails." "Bread box." Rose, kindling. To Silas. "We have stew to heat." He nodded as if the stew were part of the fixing. "I'll bring the hinge in out of the wind." He stepped to the door, hand sure, eyes measuring. The sky went from pewter to lead. In the timber beyond the yard, something small barked twice and fell silent. Nora set her palm on the lintel as she passed under, the old gesture that says, "A roof is a promise." A life is built of such promises, set and braced and checked each evening before the dark. She thought of the circle on the ridge, the gray backs melting into trees, and of the man who had stood where danger had stood. Some people arrive like the weather. Others arrive like decisions. "Mind your feet," she said again, though they were inside now. "We keep what we have safe." The door would not hold, so he made it hold. Silas set the broken hinge across his knee and warmed it with his breath before the stove had time to catch. Nora brought a rag and a tin of nails. He chose 3 by touch. Ben stood close. Rose coaxed a flame through bark curls until the iron sighed. "It's not just the screws," Silas said. "The jam split. We'll share a piece to take the bite. You have scrap?" "Oak from the wagon tongue," Nora said. "My father's. Good wood remembers its promise." He fitted the rail and planed the lip with his knife, no flourish, only steadiness. Nora set the stew near the heat, close enough to speak welcome, not close enough to say debt. Pride, like a small fire, burned clear in her. A straight door would be a fair trade, safety for supper. Ben held the nails. Rose held the rag. Silas showed Ben how to brace the door so the weight did not fight the hinge. A door is a choice you make twice, he said. When you hang it and every time you close it. The house sounded different. A thud, a cough, the click of a screw. Wolves test a latch the way men test a man, Silas added. If it gives the first time, they won't forget. Men? Rose asked. Peddlers, Nora said. Crews. Strays who think a widow can't count change. She met Silas's eye so he would know she had counted all kinds. He gave the smallest nod. Outside, dusk pressed low on the pines and pasture. When the door swung true and stopped on its own will, the house seemed to lift. Nora set the bowls. Eat, she said. There's more. Silas washed his hands, careful with the water as if it had pride too. He sat only after the children had taken their spoons. He ate the way he worked, each bite a task. You come far? Nora asked. North Forks. Cabin by Alder Run. Traps on the lower creek. Ice makes them honest. He flexed his fingers. The knuckles were raw. She noticed without saying so. Alone. Quieter alone, he said. Quieter draws fur. Quieter keeps debt simple. She set bread on the table. The crust cracked like bark. You've a good ridge, Silas said. Wind holds the scent low. They'll circle and test. You stood where you should. A woman learns her edges, she answered, and keeps her children on the bright side. Ben asked, Did you see how I held the hinge? I did, Silas said. You set your weight right? Weight is where a man's word lives. Rose stroked the rag. Will they come back? Wolves are a kind of weather, Silas said. They pass and return. We keep our side in order. Most days that's enough. He finished and set his spoon in the bowl. He rose before thanks could make the air awkward. What do we owe? Nora asked because respect required it. You paid, he said, glancing at the door, at the stew, at the children leaning against the sound of hinges. I'll leave a bar of iron. Heat it and touch each screw head. Threads will seat when the frost heaves. He took a small bar and a pouch that clinked. Snares, he said, putting it in Ben's palm. Rabbit comes to willow. Set at dusk. Check at dawn. And never let hunger make you careless. Nora lifted her chin. We won't be careless. His eyes went to her hands, the places a woman's life writes itself. Pump-burned knuckles, a pale thread scar at the wrist, a crescent nick from a scythe. He looked as a doctor might, cataloging what would matter. He set his hat back on. I'll walk you a line in the morning if you'd have it. Show where to take the ridge when the snow crusts. Saves a mile and 2 breaths of worry. Nora measured the offer. Pride wants to stand alone because it remembers standing with another, and finding the ground uncertain. Wisdom is another kind of standing. We'll be up before light, she said. Ben carries the pail. Rose keeps the matches. He tipped his brim. I'll be at the willow break. At the latch, he paused, testing its promise the way a man tests his own. You hang a straight door, he said quietly, and winter hangs a straighter night. He stepped into the pewter dusk. The sky dropped closer. The snow took his footfalls and put nothing back. The house hummed behind him, snug as a held breath. Nora set the iron on the stove lip to remember. She touched the latch and felt the night stop there where it should. Some days survival is a list. Some evenings it is a sentence. Tonight the words made sense. They met the cold where the willows ended. Silas waited at first light, hat brim white with rime, rifle slung, a willow stick in his hand. Nora came with the children and the steady sound of boots. We walk the line you'll use most, he said. Ridge to your left shoulder, creek to your ear. If the wind is in your teeth, you're headed home. He tapped the crust. Sugar snow looks firm and breaks sly. Test with the weight you can afford to lose. That's what a stick is for. Ben tried the tap. Rose echoed it softly. The ground keeps last night's story, Silas said. Read the simple words first. He showed rabbit, grouse, and the faint scallop where a fox had changed its mind. 2 wolves passed before dawn. See the long print at the rear? Heavier. That's the year leader. If you must look long, look from shelter. Nora listened the way a woman does when a lesson may one day be the fence between breath and sorrow. She kept the children paced to his marks and stored the phrases for lean months. At the notch where the ridge bent, Silas set the stick and showed how a crust carries and then betrays. Step where the snow already knows a foot, he said. It's like speaking in a town where you're a stranger. Use the words they already trust. They crossed a patch of wind-scoured ground. Silas pulled a rusted tin from his pocket. Matches sealed in paper, a curl of birch, a clod of pitch. "Carry fire like a secret you can tell in the dark," he said, handing it to Nora. "Make your own later. This covers the day you forget." "We keep a blue china jar," she said, "but I haven't sealed them." "Do it tonight," he answered. "Regret is a poor tinder." He led them to a gate of bowed willow. "Here the drifts hide a hollow," he said. "Snow bridges are friends until they aren't. Send your stick first. Send your pride last. What if it breaks?" Rose asked. "Then you do a small thing next," Silas said. "Small things in a row make a rescue." They cut a notch in a pine at shoulder height. "Never mark a tree a man will need for lumber," he said. "But leave talk for yourself after storms. This says, the way home has a bend." At a shelf of rock, Silas flexed his fingers and winced before the glove hid the truth. Nora had seen the way he set his hands near the stove last night. Exactly where a burned thing fears and wants heat. "Pride makes a poor doctor. You'll lose skin if you don't mind it," she said, voice level as if discussing fence wire. "Blisters mean infection. Infection steals men quieter than wolves." "I've rubbed snow," he said. "Keeps the burn honest." "You'll keep the damage," she answered. "You don't rub frostbite. You warm steadily and don't refreeze. I have goose fat and a clean cloth." It's a trade for yesterday's door. Trade, not charity. He could take it without bending what should not bend. "I'll come at dusk," he said. "Bring your pride," she said. "We'll set it by the stove, but not too near." They moved on. He taught whistle signals. One long for stop, two short for back. Three quick for help, so a family could speak through trees without raising unwanted ears. At a bend like all other bends, a scrap of gray hide snagged on deadfall. "Old cow," he said. "What's left of her?" "Wolves revisit the memory of meat. Memory is their map. Don't let your yard teach them." They took the return path lower, learning the drift bowls and the creek's voice under ice. When the house came in sight, boards gray, stovepipe thin as a sentence, Nora felt the day settle. The ridge had given them its first page. They had read without getting lost. At the step, Silas paused. "You'll have hens come thaw," he said. "Keep straw deep and leave no corn out overnight. A coon teaches a fox, and a fox teaches a bad habit to a wolf." "We'll teach the right lessons first," Nora said. "That's all a man can do," he answered. He touched the latch, a new habit now, and let the door's true swing answer him. "Dusk," he said. "I'll bring a strip of clean cloth besides." "Bring your hands," Nora said. "I have the rest." He tipped his hat and turned back into a day that would not pretend to be kind. The children slipped inside. Nora stood a moment longer, the tin warm in her palm, and listened to the ridge go on breathing. Some mornings the world gives you a map. The work is to walk it before the lines fade. Frostbite does not argue. It takes. Dusk lay a thin shine over the yard when Silas came back, hat rim crusted, a strip of clean muslin in his pocket. Nora had the stove steady, water warming to the edge of comfort, goose fat softening in a saucer. Ben swept the hearth. Rose laid a quilt on the table. "Sit," Nora said. "We'll mind this before the night sets its teeth." Silas held out his hands as a man offers a truth. The knuckles showed the pencil gray of cold's claim. He did not flinch when she turned his palms to the light. "You feel this?" she asked, brushing with a feather's edge cut from a willow switch. "A little," he said. "Like a story told through a wall." "We've time then." She dipped a clean cloth, wrung it until it did not steam, and wrapped each hand in patience. "We warm slowly and certainly. We do not rub. Friction is a liar." He watched the way she counted her breaths. The children watched him with the same attention they gave to bread rising. Nora lifted the clothes, pressed again, and changed them. Ben, add a split stick. Rose, another rag. Silas said nothing until feeling crept back like water returning to a drained trough. "That's the ache I was waiting for." "Ache means the road is open," Nora said. "We won't travel far tonight." She dried his hands, patted them with goose fat thin as trust, and bound them with muslin. "Keep them above your heart when you sleep. Pride sleeps with its hands low. Wisdom knows better." He flexed, the bandage making him clumsy. "You mend straight as you hang a door." She allowed a sliver of a smile. "I trade in what lasts." Rose set a tin cup by him. "Molasses tea," she said. Silas sipped. "Sweet says a thing is worth finishing." Ben produced the snare Silas had left and a slim willow hoop. I set 2, he said. I'll check them when the light is honest. That's a fair bargain with hunger, Silas answered. Nora unrolled a twist of blue yarn and shook out 2 mitten liners she had knit of nights and plain. She laid them next to his hat. For the wind that finds seams, she said. They'll serve until your hands remember warmth from their own side. Silas looked at the gift the way a thirsty man looks at a pump that works. I have something for your side of the wind, he said, and took a length of rawhide from his coat, braided and knotted with camp patience. Hang this on the chicken door come thaw. It slaps in a way foxes dislike. It teaches the yard to speak. Rose stroked the braid and smiled with her whole face. It says go, she decided. Exactly, Silas said. They ate what was left from noon and let the talk be small. Little words are a roof to sit under while big thoughts cool. Nora mended a shirt seam with the fine haste of someone proud of neatness. Silas sharpened a knife with bandaged awkwardness. After he stood at the door he had set true and listened to the snow's quiet. Tracks will sit down on the yard tonight, he said. They may only look. We'll let them look, Nora answered. Looking is the first courtesy of all neighbors. He hesitated, then said, I'll keep to my cabin come morning. He glanced at the gauze on his hands as if it were someone else's foolishness. A man alone attracts lessoning from the world. Nora folded the quilt. A man alone misses some he ought to learn, she said without heat. Still, your traps won't check themselves. If you need fat for your hands, come. He tipped his hat but did not put it on. There's a ridge north that the wolves favor when the moon is thin, he offered. If you smell iron at dawn, keep to the lower path. We'll keep to what we've been shown, she said. The night took him again. The latch closed clean as a sentence that knows its period. Nora banked the fire, set the yarn away, and touched the muslin roll left on the table. Rose yawned and crawled under her blanket. Ben checked the snare line in the corner. The house settled on its beams. Nora blew the lamp low and stood by the window square where the dark presses like a hand. She could not see the ridge, but she could feel it leaning close, the way a stern neighbor leans when your work is half done. The day had been full of useful mercies, and useful mercies, once counted, make a person brave. Some debts come due in coin. Some are paid in the keeping of promises. Before dawn, the hinge answered every gust. Nora lay listening as the dark pressed its weight against the house and broke on the latch with a small, decent sound. She counted the children's breaths. What you set straight in daylight keeps faith in the dark, she thought. When the kettle whispered, she rose, wrapped a shawl, and fed the fire 2 thin splits. The matches lay sealed in blue paper in the china jar, done as promised. She touched the tin Silas had given and felt the day gather. Ben woke before she called. Snare? He asked, pulling boots. Snare, she said. Take the stick. Read what the ground says before you write your answer. He went carefully out. Rose turned on her pillow. Nora laid a hand on the child's back and felt the warmth that keeps courage honest. She braided her hair at the window where the sky began to think about light. She considered the week. Laundry, hens once the thaw freed them, a quilt block at the schoolhouse. She would bring bread and steady hands and come home with needles, salt and the kind of news that warms a room. Silas's words moved through her like a tune. Ridge to your left shoulder, creak to your ear. Use the words they already trust. Small things in a row make a rescue. Ben came back with a rabbit and the snare looped tidy in the other hand. His cheeks were red with pride. He did not speak. Clean it by the stump, she said. Keep the hide whole. Salt it if the day stays cold. Can I keep the foot? Rose asked from the doorway. You can keep the learning, Nora said. We bless what feeds us by using it well. They ate porridge and a thin slice of cheese. Ben spoke of tracks by the willow, hare and fox, and the faint scallop of something watching that did not come close. Let looking be the lesson, Nora answered. We look back on our work. When the children took their chores, Nora set the bread, kneaded the dough into it, and put it to rise by the stove. She wrote a list on the back of an old letter. Needles, salt, stove rope, 2 hinges for the chicken door, heavy thread. It was a fence of small things against a long season. Work is how a person tells tomorrow they expect to meet it standing. Out beyond the ridge, Silas lay in his bunk with bandaged hands propped on a folded coat, exactly as she had said. The ache had bitten and then backed off. He listened to the cabin speak, boards answering boards, the stovepipe tapping. He tried a fist and stopped. The cloth held. Pride tested the bandage and wisdom let it be. On the shelf sat a coil of chain, a stone, a dented cup, and a folded envelope gone soft at the corners. He looked at the letter without reaching. Men who keep to themselves do so for reasons that don't fatten on telling. He slid the mitten liner she had given over the bandage. Warmth moved up his arms with a plain goodness. He brewed coffee thin as winter light and broke a biscuit past its best. He thought of the Hale kitchen, the lamp steady, the children hovering by the edge of usefulness and being invited in. He went to the door, looked at the sky and set himself to easy work, checking near sets, mending a snowshoe thong, reshaping a trigger that had learned a bad habit in the cold. Toward noon, he took the lower trail and stood on the rise across from the Hale yard, near enough to see smoke lift, far enough to refuse curiosity its cheaper coins. He meant to leave the roll of muslin he had forgotten, meant to teach his feet that leaving was still what he did best. But the sight of that straight door held him like a quiet word. Stay until the lesson is finished. He turned and went back to his own roof, repeating her sentence, "We keep what we have safe," until it sounded like a vow he could make again. Evening came tidy. Ben skinned the rabbit neatly. Rose sorted kindling by size, and Nora cut bread with a sawyer's patience. She set a second bowl at the table and did not name it. If a man came, there would be supper. The hinge answered the night and kept counsel. The house breathed. On the ridge, the day's track softened. Somewhere, a wolf lifted its nose and chose the farther timber. The ridge kept its distance. Some truths are best said low and kept. A straight door, a steady fire, and a hand held just above the heart will see you through. Sleep came honestly, unhurried. The schoolhouse lamp cut a square out of the dark. Nora tied a scarf under Rose's chin, checked Ben's mittens, and lifted the loaf she had promised. She set the door on its latch and felt it answer. When a thing learns to hold, you let it hold. Silas came off the ditch road from Alder Run, walking where ruts were truest. Bandages hid under wool. He carried an ash stave and a coil of wire. He kept his distance until the children waved. He came up then. Hiding teaches the wrong lesson. The schoolhouse stood square on its fieldstone and knew its purpose. Lamplight made a true geometry on the snow. The window showed skirts and a ladle's swing. A fiddle tried a tune and found it. The stove kept counsel like an old deacon. Mrs. Klein took Nora's bread with both hands. Mr. Meekum told Ben he looked dependable. Rose was set at the quilt frame with a 9-patch ready. Our room will tell you what it expects of you. The Hales answered it. Silas came in after Stu and talk softened the awkwardness. He set the ash stave by the door. Farney, the schoolmaster, tested it with a thumb and nodded. Children drifted near as they do to a trapper with stories. He showed a boy how to mend a snowshoe thong with one knot and quiet teeth. "Quinn," Mr. Meacham said, measuring him, "you set a clean trap." "I try to set it honestly," Silas answered. "That's the only clean there is," the blacksmith said, stamping the remark with his hand on Silas's shoulder. Nora poured coffee with the economy that keeps a community even. Pride rested in her chest, not loud. It is no small thing for a man to be seen doing good in your name. It writes a fair line in the air. They ate and talk went round. 2 cows heavy, a sled lost to overflow. Sunday's sermon on keeping one another. The fiddle opened a square. Ben tried the steps, lost them, laughed, and found them again. Rose's needle moved steadily. Warmth unlearned a month of bracing in Nora's shoulders. Silas reached for coffee and found Nora there with the pot. Their hands nearly touched over a clean cup. "You hung a good door," he said. "You kept your hands," she said. The air between them cleared, not warmer, just truer. "I've thought about that ridge line," Silas said, voice low under the music. "The way the wind sets, you'll smell iron before you see trouble. If I hear it first, I can hang a bell on my side. Sound carries clean and cold. That's kindness," Nora said. "I can mind your bandages until they forget their lesson." He looked as if the words cost him and paid him both. A man can get used to the wrong kind of quiet. Before the answer could come, Mrs. Klein called the bread auction. Ben tugged Nora's sleeve to show the rabbit's foot he had traded for marbles. The chance lay there between them like a tool left on a bench. Later, Mr. Meekum asked Silas to call the sets. Silas tapped the post and called figures clean. The turns came right because his voice did. It was public proof of steadiness, and public proof matters. Elias Dodd came in at last, a narrow man, new hat, old opinions. He had traded questions for cash since freighting failed and carried both like debts. "Widow Hale," he said at the coffee table. Watch that ridge picker's tracks near your yard. A man who keeps to trees keeps secrets. A man who fixes a door teaches one, Nora answered. My yard has its lessons also. Dodd smiled as if he'd found a nail and hoped to hear it squeal. Secrets breed trouble. So does talk that hasn't been outside, she said, and poured for a woman who worked. The lamps lowered. Meacham's wife said goodnight in a way that endorsed the day. Silas swept the floor evenly. A man leaves a room as he found it. They stepped into the cold. Stars sat on the ridge like bees. Silas walked the first stretch without remark. At the willow bend, he stopped. If the crust sets by morning, he said, I'll be north of Alder, but I'll listen. And so will I, Nora said. Let the cold carry that between us. They parted without ceremony. On the way home, the children hummed a scrap of tune. The door answered as it should. Nora banked the fire and let the quiet climb the walls. She thought of a hand over a cup that had almost touched. Some nights the town nods at you in public so you can stand straighter in private. That is a form of warmth the weather cannot take. Red showed up where no red should be. It lay along the fence in little fists, a thread of butcher's wash on clean crust. Nora saw it when she stepped to the pump. She called the children back and read the ground. A drag mark angled from the ditch. Boots had come and gone with care until they hadn't. One toe dug where a man misjudged the ice. Silas came from the willow break as if the ridge had sent him. You smell it? He asked. I do. Blood sits in winter air the way a lie sits in a quiet room. Plain to anyone who has lived with either. Someone salted your fence, he said. Not a fox. He pointed with his stick. Hen nails on that left boot are set in a half moon. That's a town job Meacham's kept 3 winters. Elias Dodd wears nails like that. What does he want? Nora asked. Doors that open when he knocks, Silas said. Coin for counsel. Maybe fur off my lines without the bother of bait. 2 wants can travel in 1 pair of boots, she answered. They followed the drag to a knot of bloody hide tucked under the chicken house. Silas lifted the rag with 2 sticks and carried it wide. He shoveled clean snow over the stain. Wolves read yard lessons. Don't teach them your door smells like supper. At the back post, the rawhide braid he had given hung cut clean. Knife, he said. No fox chews that true. Ben came out slowly, stick in hand, because that was the rule. Ma, we're mending, she said. Take the second bell rope from the shed. We'll hang sound on both corners. Silas crouched where the prints crossed. He came near dawn, he said. He wanted the wolves to sign his message by night. He looked at the ridge. This is how a man courts fear when he means to sell it back. Anger settled in Nora like a load well set. No rattle, just wait. There are men who make weather, she said. We stand under our own roof. At noon, Silas checked 2 sets by Alder Run and found both sprung clean. A third trap gone left a scar in the snow. The pans carried a scuff of boot wax. He touched a heel print crushed into fern, careless weight. He carried that proof back in silence. Pride wanted iron. Wisdom said, set a straighter trap. Teach truth in daylight first. Behind the blacksmith's shed, he drew the half-moon nails on a board with coal. Meacham whistled. Dodd, he said. Hungry since freight dried up and mean the way hunger learns to be when it won't ask decent. I'll not make a town fight of it, Silas said. Not yet. Then we'll put talk where it belongs, Meacham answered. I'll walk by Hales near dusk because it's my habit. Dusk drew a wire across the yard. The bells spoke once and fell still. Nora kept a shovel by the door. The children knew the rule for lamplight. Low, curtains closed, no shadows for far eyes to read. Dodd came without hurry, coat new and smile ready. He stopped outside the gate. Evening, widow, he called loud enough for the road to hear. Bad sign up your fence this morning. Lucky I was about. Luck wore your boot, Nora said, voice flat as the yard. We cleaned it, he tilted his head. A woman alone wants friends. I have them, she said. The kind that fix what they touch. His smile pinched, then smoothed. Quinn draws trouble. Wolves follow blood, and a man like him both. Let me look on proper nights. Meacham keeps watch when he walks, Nora said. And God does the rest. Dodd's eyes sharpened. He looked at the bells, the door, and the shovel. You can be proud or you can be safe, he said softly. Some pick wrong and bury small coffins for it. Nora let the words fall to the snow and freeze there useless. I'll pick steady, she said. Good evening, Mr. Dodd. He tipped his hat and left. Silas stepped from the willow shadow after the man had passed the bend. He had kept out of sight for the same reason a trap sits quiet. to learn the footfall before the spring. Insight enough? Nora asked. Enough to name the thing, he said. He wants your fear on a string he can pull. Then we'll cut strings, she said. And hang bells. Night came clear. The bells kept counsel. On the North Forks, a wolf lifted its nose and changed its mind. Some men hunt what the weather leaves. Some men try to be the weather. Either way, a straight door and a steady heart make a poor pasture for them. Not here anyhow. The bells did not speak. Something had taught them silence. Nora woke into stillness. The yard felt held. She lifted the curtain. Snow shone like bone. Nothing moved. She pushed the window and gave 3 quick whistles, the kind that carry under cold. The sound fell flat. No answer from the willow brake. She dressed, woke Ben, and took the shovel. At the corner post, the bell rope hung slack, tied in a knot with a strip of rag stuffed into the clapper's throat. The second bell wore the same gag. Tracks ran to and from the chicken house, a boy's length, toes turned in. The chicken door sat propped with a stick too clean to be an accident. A shape ghosted from the shed, small and guilty. Hoyt, Nora said, Mrs. Klein's nephew, he sagged.
He said it was a game, the boy whispered.
Tie the bells, set the stick. 2 bits and a peppermint. He'd fetch it back for harm. Who? Mr. Dodd. The name formed like a bruise. Leave a rag, he said. For a trick. Nora took the stick from the hinge and slammed the door hard. Go home, she said. Tell your aunt exactly what you did and bring the coins back. Hurry. He ran. His boot prints crossed the yard like poor handwriting. Ben stood by the path, jaw tight. He tied our bells, he said. Some men borrow hands when theirs are not clean enough, Nora answered. Inside now. We hold the door. Bring pitch curls, the matches tin, and your ash stave. She shut the latch and banked the lamp low. From the timber came a soft scuff, a breath that belonged to more than one set of lungs. Silas, on the north trail, heard the truth in the quiet. The bells had not answered. He cut through alder and slid the last slope, rifle slung. He had meant to stay away and let the weather cool. Plans change when bells lie. The first gray back showed at the coop, shoulders bunched, eyes narrow with hunger. Nora struck pitch with steel and breathed a small fire into a braid of straw. Hold the doorway, she told Ben. Stave only. Don't chase, to Rose, under the table. Hand me rags when I ask. The wolf tested the run board. Another slid along the fence. Nora stepped out with her torch held like a sentence. Back, she said. She swung the flame to right a line the wolves could see. One fainted. Another snatched from the far side. A hen screamed and went quiet. Loss registered like a pencil mark, noted, not argued. We keep what we can. Silas reached the yard at a run. 2 shots cracked high, not to kill, only to set the air honest. The pack checked, thinking. He stepped to Nora's shoulder. Left, he said, and took the right. They moved the fire line together, widening the circle of no. A young wolf tried the gap. Ben met it with the ash stave on the board, a clean, scared blow. The animal backed. From the road came another shot, theatrical and late. Dodd's voice followed, hearty with borrowed concern. All right there? Silas did not turn. We're finished here, he said to the wolves. He meant Dodd to hear it too. The pack melted at last. The yard took its breath back. Nora pinched the flame. Ben's hands shook. Rose's eyes were wide and dry. 1 hen, Nora said, counting the cost. And a rope cut. The rest we kept. Dodd strolled to the gate. He smiled. Lucky I walked by, he said. Bells must have frozen. They were taught silence, Nora answered. They'll be untaught. Dodd's look went thin. You keep odd company, widow. Wolves smell it. Men do too. I keep the kind that fix hinges and face what comes, she said. Meekum's boots sounded on the road, solid. He took in the scene, then set himself where words might have gone crooked. You all right? We are, Nora said. We'll bury a hen and mend rope. Dodd tipped his hat and left with the air of a man who had hoped for more noise. Silas breathed once, deep. I meant to leave, he said quietly. To pull trouble to the trees. Nora wrapped fresh rope around her hand. Trouble knows the way, she said. Better met where the door swings true. He nodded once. At first light we set a sign where Dodd walks, he said. And we tell the town what the boy said. Truth is a fence, she answered. We'll build it straight. They buried the hen under clean snow. Ben reset the bell clappers. Rose swept the threshold. Inside, the house gathered them in and held. Some nights end with a debt. some with a plan. This one carried both. Dawn snapped shut like a trap that had been waiting. Silas came before the light could make promises. Rifle under his coat and a coil of twine over his shoulder. Meacham walked the road, a hammer in his pocket. Nora set the children in the back room and laid out rags, the matches tin, and the ash stave. The bells hung new and honest. We make truth noisy, Silas said. He tied a trip line from the gatepost to the coop and hung 3 iron pots from a sapling. When a man lifts what isn't his, the yard will name him. Nora wedged a paper poke of lampblack over the gate. Pitch soot ground fine, tied neat. If he pulls the latch, he wears his work, she said. If he doesn't come, we learn he feared the learning. Meacham folded his arms. Town'll want proof you could show a child, he said. Best kind. Boots came careful at first, then bold when no bell spoke. Dodd's hat showed over the fence. He reached for the latch. The soot bag burst and made a night of his face. He swore and jerked his hand. The trip line sang. Pots clanged. Bells shouted. Meacham stepped from the shadow. Morning, Elias? Dodd spun and pulled the little pistol he thought made him a big man. Silas stood inside the yard, the rifle high but quiet. Leave it, Silas said. Before the next moment found its shape, the far fence line moved. 3 wolves slid along the drifts, drawn by salt and the fear Dodd had dragged behind him for a week. The lead animal set its feet and wayed the yard. Back to the door, Nora said. Ben had the stave. Rose held a rag and the matches. Small things in a row make a rescue. Dodd panicked and fired high. The shot cracked the quiet. The wolves flowed closer, learning the taste of noise. He stumbled into the trip line and went down, soot marking the snow. Left, Silas said, stepping to the right. Nora drew the fire she had nursed to the edge of flame. She and Silas swung the torches in a clean arc, writing no across the ground. Meacham took the fence corner with his hammer raised like a bell that had learned a sterner word. The young wolf tried the board. Ben met it without wasting a step, the stave striking true. The animal yelped, backed, and chose memory over hunger. The leader came for the easy meat, the man on the ground tangling in his own string. Dodd screamed and tried to fire again. The pistol clicked on cold. Silas moved without flourish and stood where the teeth pointed, the rifle's muzzle kissing morning. No, he told the wolf. The wolf checked, unsure of this tall animal that did not break. Nora swung fire just far enough to give doubt a taste. The pack wavered, made their sums, and left the way water leaves. Silas did not lower the rifle until the last tail went to timber. Dodd lay sucking air, black with soot. Meacham plucked the pistol from his glove and broke it open. You've trespassed, the smith said. You baited a widow's yard and cut her lines. You sprung a man's traps and tried to sell fear back to the hands that made it. I meant help, Dodd rasped. You can't prove the boy will, Nora said. And the rope and your boots and the soot on your face where a neighbor's latch taught you a lesson. She was not proud, only firm. Justice is a well you drink from. Ben stood over Dodd, breath fast, stave ready, without pretending to be brave. Rose's chin was up like a little banner. Silas offered Dodd a hand he did not deserve. Stand, he said. You'll walk to town between us. You'll pay for sprung traps and for the hen you got killed and for the hours fear cost a good house. Dodd looked at the hand, then at the door that hung true. He took the help with a sour swallow. They set him on the road. Meacham walked one side, Silas the other. Nora followed a little, then stopped where the yard ended and the public way began. You've kept your side, Silas said to Nora. We'll do the rest and bring you back a town that knows where it stands. Bring me back a morning without bells, she said. We'll set bread. He touched the brim of his hat, bandage under wool, and turned Dodd toward the anvil and the law a town makes together. The ridge breathed out. The house took the quiet and held it. Some days you earn calm the hard way. Dawn took its price and paid its due back with interest and steadiness. The anvil spoke once, and the talk straightened. Meacham set Dodd inside the circle where towns are made and mended. The black hearth, the bright iron, the faces of people who work for a living. Mrs. Klein stood with Hoyt's hand in hers and did not let it tremble. The schoolmaster kept the ledger of what had been said and done. Preacher Alden came not to soften, only to witness. Truth should have company when it's told. Dodd tried to talk the way a man throws sand on ice. Misunderstanding, he said. Only meant to. Meanings live in tracks, Meacham cut in. He laid the soot-black latch on the anvil and the cut rawhide braid beside it. You baited fear. You sprung traps not yours, and you used a boy's hands because your own wouldn't do. You'll pay for sprung iron, for the hen, for the rope, for the quiet you stole, and you'll make amends the way things are made here, under a roof with witnesses, one stroke at a time. Hoyt lifted his chin and told it straight. He returned the coins and looked at the floor long enough to learn something decent. Mrs. Klein squeezed his hand when he finished. A good town punishes and teaches in the same hour. They set Dodd to work at the forge for 3 days, then fence duty a week under Meekham's eye, wages to Nora's ledger and to Silas's for stolen sets. He signed it, face still stained where the latch had marked him. The mark would fade. The remembering shouldn't. When the matter was struck and cooled, Silas stood like a post set true. I've traps to lift on Alder, he said. I'll set them higher in the timber, but there's a fence to run at Hales when the thaw lets men dig honestly. I'll put my back to that, if asked. That fence was always waiting on 2 sets of hands, Meacham said to the room, which was the same as saying it to Nora. Some jobs are like that, Nora answered with a nod that had weight. There will be bread, she said. They walked home through a noon so clean the snow seemed to breathe. Ben carried the ash stave as if it had been promoted. Rose held a paper of nails Meacham had slipped her way because charity travels better wrapped in purpose. The yard received them with its new bells, and nothing stirred but the idea of spring. Inside, Nora wrapped Silas's hands fresh. No speech to fill what work already meant. You'll keep these high again tonight, she said. One more day standing carefully and you can forget the lesson. I won't, he said. The next mornings came like pages of the same book read with warmer blood. Dodd hammered and hauled until his shoulders made a different kind of talk. He brought a hinge for the chicken door and did not meet Nora's eyes long, which was fine. Some debts should be paid to the work, not the gaze. When the thaw loosened the creek, Silas showed up with post mauls and rails stacked neatly on a sled. Ben trotted the length like a surveyor. Rose carried wedges in a flour sack and set them out in 5s. Nora marked the line with a cord and the calm of a woman who knows what straight means. They dug where frost had relented and drove cedar where the ground would have it. Silas tamped, Ben braced. Nora checked the plumb and Rose sent her small weight down the tamp like a blessing. The fence rose section by section, a sentence around a life. Meacham dropped by with a level, found nothing to correct and left satisfied, which is how a man like that shows love. At noon, Nora set coffee and hard cheese on a folded quilt. Silas took the cup with both hands because it pleased her to see him do it right. He looked toward Alder as if measuring the distance between the man he had been and the yard where bells now had honest voices. I kept a cabin, he said. It did what I asked a roof to do, kept the weather off the bread, kept my thoughts in one place. It never asked me who I meant to be next. Roofs are like questions, Nora said. Some you answer alone. Some of you answer facing the same wind, he nodded. There's a letter I haven't opened in a year. He smiled with the corner of his mouth. I don't need it to tell me what's written here. What's written here stands in posts, she said, touching the new cedar. And in a door that swings true. The fence reached the last corner and met itself, the way a story does when the telling's earned its end. Preacher Alden came by on his rounds and looked at the 4 of them through his spectacles, as if the line had been drawn through his own heart. A tidy boundary, he said. A good time for vows, if there were any to make. Silas looked at Nora, and Nora did not look away. She unknotted the rawhide braid he had given and tied it at the gatepost, a sign that said both welcome and keep right. I have a house, she said, and children and a ridge that needs steady reading. I'd have a partner who knows whether and when not to bow to it. If you'll stand here, I'll stand, Silas said, between when needed, besides the rest of the time. Preacher Alden cleared his throat and spoke the small words that turned 2 steady lives into one roof. Ben held the ash stave like a banner. Rose tied a bit of blue yarn around Silas's wrist over clean hands. The bells answered the breeze and liked what they heard. Spring put out green exactly where winter had retreated. Hens took the yard as if it had always belonged to them. The stove learned stew and laughter in the same afternoon. Some nights the wolves barked from the far timber, and the fence replied without pride or fear. People in town told it the way towns do. How a circle closed on a ridge and a man fired to mark the edge of courage. How a door hung true and a boy's whistle carried. How fear tried to be weather and failed. How 2 hands learned the same work and then signed their names to it. They say the ridge remembers. This story made history. Enjoyed this grit and grace frontier romance? Subscribe for the next tale.